Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with A Little Princess. Chapter 12, The Visitor. Sara stood quite still, her eyes growing larger, her face paler. Ermengarde burst into tears. "Oh, don't send Becky away," she sobbed. "My aunt sent me the basket. We're only having a party." "So I see," sneered Miss Minchin sarcastically, with Princess Sara at the head of the table. She turned fiercely on Sara. "It's your doing, I know. Ermengarde would never have thought of such a thing. You decorated the table, I suppose, with all this rubbish." She stamped her feet at Becky. "Go to your room," she commanded, and the poor frightened girl stole away, her shoulders shaking. "I will tend to you tomorrow, Sara," Miss Minchin bellowed. "You shall not have breakfast, lunch, or dinner." "I have not had anything to eat today, Miss Minchin," Sara said faintly. Something the nasty headmistress saw in Sara's grave eyes made her turn on her in fury. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "I was wondering," Sara said in a low voice, "what my father would say if he knew where I am tonight." "You insolent, miserable girl!" Miss Minchin cried, grabbing Sara and shaking her. "How dare you!" With that, she swept all the feast back in the hamper in a jumbled heap, thrusting into Ermengarde's arms. "I will leave you to wonder," she snapped. She shut the door behind her, pulling poor Ermengarde along and leaving Sara all alone. "There isn't any banquet left, Emily," Sara said to her doll, who was sitting with her back against the wall, staring very hard. Sara ran over and picked her up with trembling hands. "There isn't any princess," she said. "There was nothing but prisoners in the Bastille." She sat down, her face in her hands. If she had looked up in the skylight, she would have been startled to see a face pressed against the glass. But Sara didn't notice. She sat with her head in her arms for some time. Then she got up and walked slowly in her bed. Soon her eyes closed and she fell fast asleep. She did not know how long she slept, but she was so sound asleep she did not even hear Melchizedek and his family when they came out to tumble and play. When Sara did wake up, it was rather sudden. The click of the skylight as it closed had interrupted her dream. A slim figure crouched on the face of the roof, just near enough to see what had happened in the attic, but not near enough to be seen. At first, Sara opened her eyes. She felt too sleepy and, curiously enough, too warm and comfortable. "What a nice dream," she murmured. Sara felt as if soft, luxurious bedclothes were heaped upon her. She could actually feel blankets. When she put out her hand, she touched something exactly like this soft, satin-covered quilt. She decided that she must not awake from this dream. She just wanted to stay still and dry and try to make it last. Her eyes opened in spite of herself. "Oh, I haven't awakened," she whispered, rising on her elbow to look all around her. A thick rug lay before a bright, blazing fire in the gate. There were 2 chairs with soft cushions. A white linen cloth covered the table, which was set in delicate china dishes and gleaming silverware. Violets filled a small crystal vase. On the bed, in addition to the beautiful quilt, there was a silk bathrobe, quilted slippers, and a stack of books. The sturdy little attic had been changed into a wonderland. The room was flooded with brilliant light that came from a new lamp on the table. Sara jumped out of the table and scurried around the room, examining everything carefully. "So this is not a dream," she whispered. She opened the book on the top of the pile. Written on the first page was, "To the little girl in the attic, from a friend." When Sara saw the inscription, she was so touched she burst into tears. "I don't know who it is, but somebody cares for me a little. I have a friend. Becky," she whispered, running to the next room. "Wake up." When Becky sat upon her table, there stood Sara, dressed in an elegant silk robe. Princess Sara, as she remembered from her better days, was at her bedside holding a candle in her hand. "Come with me, Becky," Sara said. Becky was too frightened to speak. She almost allowed Sara into her room and almost couldn't believe the transformation. "It's true," Sara cried. "I touched everything just to make sure it's real. The magic has come into all this. The magic that won't let the worst things ever happen." Becky and Sara spent the rest of the night enjoying the hot, tasty soup Sandwiches, toast, and muffins had been sent out for them. I don't know anyone in the world who could have done this. There's been someone here, and whoever it is, whoever they are, I have a friend, Becky. Someone is my friend. However, through the grapevine, everyone at school knew by morning that Sara Crewe had been disgraced, that Ermengarde was being punished, and Miss Minchin decided to keep Becky on only because she couldn't find anyone else who would work for so little money. Sarah's growing up fast and has learned so much in the last 2 years. She will be given classes to teach, Jessie said to Lavinia. You know, it's hard to believe that this has been 2 years. Miss Minchin knows she will have to work for nothing. It was nasty of you to tell about the fun they were having in the attic. How did you find out? I caught it out of Lottie. She didn't even know she was telling me about it. And I don't think there was anything nasty about my telling Miss Minchin. It was my duty. After all Sarah's done, I wouldn't be surprised if Miss Minchin doesn't turn her out. Where would she go? Asked Jessie. How would I know? Lavina said. I imagine she will look rather strange when she comes this morning. She had no dinner yesterday, and she will not have any today. Oh, well, I think it's horrid, Jessie said. They have no right to starve someone to death. You know, they all know this is happening, so I don't know why anybody doesn't report it. I mean, to somebody. Like Lavinia, Miss Minchin had expected Sara to be upset when she came that morning. She had always been puzzled because punishment never seemed to affect Sara. But after yesterday without meals, the anger of seeing last night, and the prospect of hunger that day, Sara surely must be broken down and be desperately unhappy, Miss Minchin felt sure. Instead, Sara waltzed into French class with a spring in her step, color in her cheeks, and a smile on her face. It was the most astonishing thing Miss Minchin had ever seen. What did it mean? She called to Sara to her desk at once. You do not look as if you know you are in trouble and in disgrace, Sara. I beg your pardon, Miss Minchin said. I do know that I am in disgrace. Be good enough not to forget it. You look as if you come into a fortune. Remember, you are to have no food today. Yes, Miss Minchin, Sara answered brightly as she turned away, grateful that the magic had saved her from replying to Miss Minchin as she wanted to. After a long, hard day of running errands and putting up with unkind remarks from the cook, who treated her worse than ever, Sara was able to finally get back to the attic. To her great joy, the magic had been there again and had done even more than before. Almost every day, something new was added until the attic was a beautiful place. The ugly walls were covered with paintings and draperies. Marvelous furniture appeared, and a bookcase stood filled with beautiful books. When Sara went downstairs in the morning, the remains of dinner were still on the table. When she returned in the evening, the magic removed them and left another lovely meal. Despite the fact that Miss Minchin was as harsh as ever and life was just as difficult as ever, it didn't matter to Sara because she was living in this marvelous, mysterious real story. Well, she and Becky had more color in their faces and lost some of their thinness and had more strength. It was as if the Bastille had melted away and the two girls were no longer prisoners. Sometimes Sara read aloud from her books, and other times she just sat by the fire and tried to imagine who her unknown friend could possibly be. She wished she could tell him some of the things that were in her heart. Then one day, another wonderful thing happened. The postman came to the door and left several packages. All were addressed to the young lady in the right-hand attic. Miss Minchin just happened to come downstairs at the time and saw her. Take these things to the person they belong to, she said sternly. Don't stand there staring at them. Belong to me, Sara said quietly. To you? Exclaimed Miss Minchin. I don't know where they came from, said Sara, but they are addressed to me. I sleep in the right-hand attic. Becky has the other one. Well, what's in them? Asked Miss Minchin, rushing to her side and examining the parcel excitedly. I don't know, replied Sara, mystified. Open them, Miss Minchin ordered. Sara did as she was told. Both she and Miss Minchin were surprised to find the packages were brimming over with new clothes, dresses, shoes, gloves, a hat, even an umbrella. On the collar of a beautiful warm coat, a note was attached. To be worn every day. Will be replaced with the others when necessary. Miss Minchin was in a tailspin. Could it be that she made a mistake and that this neglected girl had some powerful friend or relative who had traced her whereabouts and chose to provide her in this mysterious way. Well, she said in a voice she had not used since Captain Crew died, someone has been very kind to you. Why don't you change your clothes and come on down to the classroom to resume your lessons? You need not run any errands today. A half an hour later, when the classroom door opened and Sarah walked in, the students were struck with amazement. My word, cried Jessie, grabbing Lavinia's elbow. Look at Princess Sarah. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.